Hello, it's the Great Canadian Bagel here, coming to you with the first and only uh, Virginia 2021 Gubernatorial projection. So I've been following this race for a bit because it is an actually interesting race that is competitive, and that is what this channel does. It follows polling and makes projections for interesting races. I have skipped a couple. For example, the U.S. I skipped covering the California recall because based on publicly available polling, there was never it was never close, so it wasn't interesting to project based on things that I had access to. I haven't posted previous videos for this, mostly because if we look here, so like now I actually have a good database of polls, but I only have 40 total, and it's kind of hard to see because all the dates here are. I'll just make this column bigger. We can see here a lot of these have been in the last week, or well, 2 weeks really. And I generally like to give it a week before entering the last poll in this kind of model, because this is a slightly different model to the one I did for the Canadian projections because it's a different type of election, so it needs a different type of model. This is just a straight popular vote election. It's not the same as like a Canadian election where you're not directly electing a prime minister. People are voting for uh, their MPs in a riding, and then the party with the most MPs, generally speaking, becomes prime minister. So, as said, it's really only been the last 2 weeks that the race, or that we, like a lot of the polls are the last couple weeks here, and before that, I was in my break after covering the Canadian election. So here we are. This is what we're getting. So now to get to the headline result, as any observant viewer might have already noticed, I am projecting that Glenn Youngkin is going to win. I am projecting him at about 49.9% of the popular vote and McAuliffe at 47.8% for a lead of 2.1%. There is a margin of error here of about 2.76 for McAuliffe and 6.52 for Youngkin. It's quite large margin of error on Youngkin, but his polls are pretty all over the place. Some, like this one, I'm just picking at random. I'm not. This one, he scored a 7 point lead over McAuliffe. It's in September, so it's not that significant. But again, that one he scores a 7 point lead over McAuliffe. But if we go up to, let me try to find another one. This one, a week later, McAuliffe scores 6 point lead over Youngkin, and it's a lot like that. There's a lot of noise in the polling data. It definitely is trajecting. The trajectory is towards Youngkin. I am fairly confident with my lead number here of 2.1, but there is a lot of noise on it, so there is a large margin of error for Youngkin specifically. McAuliffe's been pretty constant. Youngkin started off with pretty bad polling numbers. Like, we start, well, depends. Like, these 48s and 47s on here are decent, but a lot of these are like 45, 42, 45, which are not great. If we go over here, we go to 2017. 45-ish is what the Republican got in 2017. So you would expect nothing changing. A Republican candidate would be getting around 45%. And if we go back here, there is a lot of polls early on. Some, like I said, he's a bit better, but a lot are a bit worse, about the same. It's really only second half of September, October, where Youngkin really starts leading forward. But because the model considers older polls, that is a thing that increases the margin of error. But all of this said, I do think or I am very confident in my projection, Youngkin is going to win. As we see here, we see this projection map of the 2017 election. I think this is going to be largely the same in the actual vote share. So Southwest is very red. This like central area here, I'm not sure exactly what Virginia would call this part, but whatever this part here, probably going to be redder, a deeper red than this. This is like just shot, like just low majorities of these counties. Likely going to be redder. These will be deep red, likely. The big difference, what I think we're going to see is a lot of the suburbs, especially up here, might not shine very well because I'm not exactly sure where the suburbs are, but the suburbs probably around North Virginia area and like Richmond area are likely going to swing a lot redder because the main number one issue with poll after poll, the reason why it looks like Youngkin is going to win, which we go back here, this is better page stuff. The reason why it looks like Youngkin is going to win this race is 100% education. Now, I will not profess to be an expert on anything to do with Virginia education rules, but what I can tell you is I've read a lot of polls, and I have generally followed the rationale behind the outrage over education system. I don't know the specific details, so I cannot comment on whether it's true or not, whether it's fake, which side I support, because I don't know all the details, and I do not want to put a channel-wide stance on that kind of stuff because I haven't looked into it. But what I can say for sure is that the teaching of materials in Virginia schools, particularly the allegations of teaching critical race theory, allegations of teaching sexually explicit content in reading materials, whether this is true or not, is driving is basically completely swinging the people with kids demographic from, generally speaking, like it's not a majorly partisan demographic. For example, in the U.S., typically speaking, African Americans are overwhelmingly Democrat. Normally, parents are not overwhelmingly Republican. Right now, it's looking close to 20-point margin, depending on the poll. Sometimes it's as low as 15-point margin of Republicans in that group, which is a huge demographic. And you look at the people who don't have kids in school, they're even split. So right there is the main driving factor. It's education, whether it's support of charter schools, the opposition to critical race theory, the opposition to the type of reading materials in classrooms, whatever the reason, whatever the truth is, because again, I don't have the resources to actually investigate this. I could throw you a bunch of news sources I've seen, but that doesn't matter because that's not my point, or that's not the point of this channel. I'm not arguing whether a point is correct or wrong. I'm talking about why something is happening in an election. It is, if we go back here, it is not certain come November 2nd, when I think this election happens, that McAuliffe is going to lose, because these are overlapping confidence intervals. I don't want to do the math offhand, but it's reasonably plausible that if we go back to here, this kind of you wouldn't see McAuliffe at 54-ish, but you could totally see McAuliffe above 50% and Youngkin around 45, maybe a bit better, maybe a bit worse. That is a plausible outcome, but it's far more likely. On the balance of probabilities, I mean, I could do the statistics on this confidence interval, what the odds of McAuliffe winning are, but not having done the math on it and not willing to do the math live on camera is very low. And yes, some of you might have noticed that my Excel subscription is running out. Don't worry about it. So, the end of the story here. It looks like on the back of opposition to Democrat, the perception of Democrat, or possibly the reality, the perception and or reality of the Democrat education policies is swinging the gubernatorial race here. And while I haven't done the projections for the lieutenant governor or the attorney general races, those also look like the Republicans might swing both of those too, though they're not as large a lead as Youngkin has right now in my projection. So, if you like the video, please like, share, subscribe below. If you think I'm completely baseless with this, let me know in the comments. If you think I'm correct, let me know in the comments. If you think I've missed something in my analysis of why it looks like Youngkin has went from being, again, if we go back here, not necessarily a distant second, but almost a likely second place finish based on his early polling to almost certainly going to win. If you don't think my analysis of that is correct, let me know. I'm open to all the ideas or all comments that are not just generic and you suck. Though if you feel like saying those, I mean, feel free. I gotta go laugh about them. At least be creative, though, if you're gonna insult me. Anyways, cheers.